called that function, right? Right. So this pointer is what? If you are calling any function, say if I'm saying object1 dot display function, okay? So while calling this function, display function, we are calling this display function on which object? Object1. So at this moment in time, your this pointer is pointing to object1, okay? So all the modifications done here, maybe in this function, will be reflected in object1. If we call the same function on object2, your this pointer will start pointing to object 2, okay? So whichever on whichever object we are calling a particular function, your this pointer is pointing to that object, okay? So this is the relevance of this pointer. So static member function do not have access to this pointer of the class. So this restriction is there on the static function. They cannot access this pointer for any class. So if you cannot access this pointer, see this pointer is what? It is specific to one particular object, okay? It is not common to all. See here, this pointer is pointing to object 1, here it is pointing to object 2. So each time whenever you call the function, that this pointer will start pointing to that particular object, okay? So this pointer is specific to a particular object. It is not common to all the object of one class, okay? It is specific to one particular object. अगर वो specific हो गया तो in that case, is this concept applicable to static function or static variable? What we have seen, this pointer is specific to object, isn't it? We have seen that this pointer is specific to object. Like at this moment it is pointing to object 2, at this moment it is pointing to object 1. So if this pointer is specific to object, my question is that is it applicable to static, either function or variable? Yes, you getting the question? We'll wait for I will wait for you to answer. Let us keep waiting. By that time I'll take the attendance. Hmm. Yes. Have you understood the question?
Can you repeat the question?
Hmm. See, what is the relevance of this pointer? Yesterday we have discussed about this pointer, okay? What is the role of this pointer? Have you understood that? Yesterday we discussed about this pointer. Do you understand what is this pointer?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
yesterday, yes, we have discussed on there. This pointer is pointing to an object on which we have called the function. So now if we are calling the function on object 2, your this pointer will start pointing to object 2, right? So it is, so can we say that this pointer is specific to object? First question. This pointer is specific to object. Is it true, this statement?
No.
This pointer is specific to object at that moment in time. At that moment in time.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, yes. At that
Yes.
moment.
Yes, this statement is true, right? That this pointer is specific to a particular object at a particular moment in time. Okay. So the next question is, if it is specific to object, can we apply it for a static variable or static function? For static variable or static function, what we have seen that its scope is class scope. It is not for particular object. Static variable, as I told you yesterday, class teacher, if we assign a particular class teacher for all, for division C, so that class teacher name is for all the student, all 72 student. It is not specific to one particular student, right? So the scope of static variable is what? The scope
Class.
of class, right? It is class. And this pointer ke liye, what is the scope? It is specific to particular object at that moment in time. So my question is, can we use this pointer with static variable or static function?
No.
No, ma'am.
Yes. Now is it clear? This pointer is specific to one particular object at that moment in time, whereas static data or static function, these are having class scope. It is not having a particular object scope. Okay. So in that case, we cannot use this pointer with static. We cannot use this pointer with static because static ke liye scope is entire class, whereas for this pointer, scope is particular object. Okay, so that's the reason this pointer cannot be used with static. So they cannot have access to this pointer of the class and thus cannot access non-static data members. अगर उसे this pointer नहीं है available, so they cannot access the normal variables which are there in that class. Like yesterday we discussed, say for example in this class, I have taken one example also directly here. So here, this is a class wherein I have declared this static variable s, int s, and I made it static. Just by adding this keyword static, I made this s variable as static. Okay. So now when we declare any static function here, see, this is static member data. I'm declaring this data as static. Whereas here, this function is declared as static. So there is a difference now. This is static data member and this is static member function. Function I'm declaring as static. So when we are declaring any function as static, inside this static function, we can access all the static members only. मतलब यहाँ पे display is a static function, so it can access s because s is what? It is static variable. Okay, so we can access static variable inside static function, but if we try to access normal variable like I is a normal variable. If I try to access this I here, it won't allow me to access this variable. What is the reason? Because to refer I is specific to object. Like you take example of roll number. Roll number क्या है आपका? Specific to one particular student or specific to one particular object. Whereas class teacher name is for all the object, common for all the object. Okay, yesterday we have seen this also, like this is like every object is having its own data and this is the static member. Static member is common to all the object. Okay, na? So in that case, your static functions can access only static data, whereas you cannot access other common members inside static function. It is you will get error if you try to access normal members inside static function. Okay, so static functions can access only static data. Okay, like say for example, yesterday's example, if we consider, so to initialize the name of the class teacher or to display the name of the class teacher, you can have a separate function. Sirf class teacher is your static data or static member. So in that case, just class teacher, for handling class teacher data, you can have a separate static function. अगर आप normal data यहाँ पे handle करोगे inside static function, it will give you error. Okay, so this is not allowed. Only static function can access static data. Now, as yesterday we have discussed, after once your class closes, you have to redeclare. You need to again declare or initialize this particular s variable here, saying integer s, and you need to add the class scope here. This is the name of the class and this is scope resolution. So this is the place wherein your static variable gets initialized. Either you can give some value here, or if you don't give any value, it is automatically initialized to 0. So this is the place wherein you have to initialize the static variable. Okay, this is compulsory. This keyword, adding this keyword and initialization like this. It is compulsory for static data member. Okay, and about function, what we have seen, this static function can access only static data. They cannot access the other members in that class. Otherwise, you will get the error. Now, how to access static function. Yesterday, we have seen how to access static members. So same rule is applicable for static functions also. Like either you can access or call these members using class name and scope resolution, or you can call it in your normal way, object.display. So either you can call it in this manner on object, or you can call it on that class name directly. Okay. So this is about static member function, important points. Next is the main usage of static function is when the programmer wants to have a function which is accessible even when the class is not instantiated. That is, even that object is not created. Before that, if you want to access that function, it is possible with static function. I'll explain it with the example. Do not declare static member function as virtual. So virtual, yet we haven't covered virtual concept, but static member functions cannot be declared as virtual. So these are some important points related to static function. Okay, so now let us discuss some example to understand this concept. Okay. So this is one simple example I have taken. Or before that, what we'll do, we'll take this example first and we'll execute it. See what we have done in this program. Some class is there. Static variable is declared here. One normal variable is declared inside this class. And in this, this display function, we have declared it as static function. Just by adding this keyword, this function will be treated as static. So now inside this function, you can access S. Right? So we are displaying the value of S. Close the function, close the class. Now, as I told you, this initialization of this s variable is important here. Okay, so this is the initialization of this s variable. Now, inside main, we are declaring one object of C1. C1 is the class name. So one object of C1 is created. And then I'm calling this display function using C1. C1 is the class name, scope resolution, and display. And the same function I'm calling using object also. Okay, so I'm using both the methods to call this display function, and this display function is just displaying the value of s. So which value we are getting on the screen? 0, 0. Okay, because I'm calling this function twice. So I'm getting this 0 twice. Have I initialized the value of s yet? Have I assigned any value to s? Why is it showing 0, 0? It should, see, if we haven't initialized any value, it is supposed to show garbage value, right? Okay, so have I initialized this s anywhere? मैंने कुछ value दिया है s को anywhere in this program? No.
No.
Okay, so the basic rule with static variable is, if even if you don't initialize it, automatically compiler takes 0 value in it. So auto initialization हो जाता है. This is the place wherein it is initialized. Okay. Is it possible to give any other value to this static variable? Yes, you can initialize it with any other value. Suppose let's make it 15 initial value. Okay, and run this program. So now it is taking 15. Okay, so it is possible to initialize it with any value. ऐसे कुछ नहीं कि static को 0 से ही initialize करना है. That is not a rule. But initialization is compulsory. You either specifically use equal to and some value. अगर आप नहीं करते हो तो by default वो क्या कर लेता है? Equal to 0 कर लेता है ये place पे. So this is the place wherein it gets initialized to 0. Right? Is it clear? You can put any value that is allowed. Okay, if you don't put, then in that case, it considers 0. Is it clear? First simple example.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Any doubt here how to declare? This is the declaration of static variable. This is declaration of static function. Here we are accessing that static variable. This is the initialization of static variable. यहाँ पे initialize कर रहा है वो 0 को. Okay. And this is calling static function. So any doubt in this? This is very basic actually. Syntax we are discussing now. After this, we'll discuss some examples. So any doubt so far related to static data or function? No? Okay. So now let us discuss another example. Now here I've taken, okay, this same example. I'll just make some modifications here. Now I'll try to access the value of I here. ये आपका कौन सा function है? Static function है. So inside this static function, I'm trying to access I. Is I your static variable?
No.
No. वो static नहीं है. Yes, I is not a static variable. And if I try to access I inside static function, ये आपका static function है. उसके अंदर अगर I access करते हो, let us see what is happening. What you are getting? Error. Yes, invalid use of member I in static member function. Okay, this is the error. So what we have understood with this, that we cannot access normal variables inside static function. It is not allowed. Otherwise, you will get error. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is not allowed. That's the reason I've commented this part. Okay, this cannot be accessed. And same example is there. Just accessing that, I'm trying to access in this method, small modification I've done. I'll just copy this code. Very minor modification I've done. So what things I've done here, this part is same, exactly same, class declaration, taking two variable, one is static, one is non-static, accessing your static variable here. Now in main program, main function, I've made some changes. In main, what I'm doing, I'm accessing this s variable at the beginning. Have I created any object so far? Object of C1?
No.
No. can you access, the next question is, can you access I directly like this before creating object? अगर मैं यहाँ पे लेती हूँ, see both of these variables are in public, है कि नहीं? S and I both are public. Public मतलब you can access it from main. So now tell me, can I access the value of I here in main using just simply your class name? Can I access it like this? Is it allowed? This
No,
way?
ma'am.
No, ma'am.
No. When can I access I?
Object declaration.
See, if I have to access I, first I need to create an object, and then using object, I can say obj dot I. This is allowed, right? This is allowed. After creation of object, you can access the variable because that it is specific to object. We have seen all these variables are specific to object. Okay, they internally your this pointer is pointing to all these variables, okay, for that particular object. So this is possible. If you have to access I, you need to create object of it. Okay, na? Now the next thing, in this program, have I created any object here before accessing S? No, but still it is allowing me to access S. The reason is that S is what? It is a static variable and its scope is for the entire class. मतलब जैसे कि आपको class teacher, yesterday I have given you example कि if you want to assign a class teacher, it is possible before admissions also. हम वैसे ही करते हैं in academics. We assign the class teacher first and then admission happens for that particular class. Okay. So class teacher अगर आपको assign करना है, so in that case, using directly class, you can assign that class teacher. Directly you can say C1 of class. If you have declared that class teacher inside your C1, you can simply say is equal to right. So before admissions itself, you can, before creating any of the object of the student, you can assign that value to that variable. So this is the importance of static variable. आपको जरूरत नहीं कि उसका object create करे. Directly you can access that before creating any object. Okay. Sometimes in project it happens that before you create the object, something has to be done for the entire class, for all the object of that class. So in those situations, you can use static variable. Are you getting the importance? I'm explaining it with relevant example also, like this. So is it clear what is the relevance of static?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So here I'm saying C1, class scope and S1. So I'm just displaying its value. You can take input from user also. अगर आपको user से input लेना है, like you can say Cin, C1 colon, the colon is scope resolution actually. I should say scope resolution and then name of that variable S. Okay. So in this manner, what will happen? You are collecting this value from user. If you don't collect, what is the rule? It will automatically initialize with 0. अगर आपने नहीं किया है तो वो 0 तो करना ही है उसको. But otherwise you can collect this value from user also. ठीक है ना? वो overwrite करेगा. जो user से value आएगी, it will overwrite on that S value. Then I'm displaying its value on the screen. ठीक है? Now, this is about static data. Now static function. Okay. Now for calling this static function, there are different methods. One method is directly using class. We can call it C1 colon and display. Another method is creating object also you can call it. On object also you can call it. So object dot display, object dot S. So this is how you can change the value of S also. S is what? S is your static variable. Now what I've done for this one object, I'm assigning 10 value to this S. Okay. Now, are you getting till now whatever we are discussing? See here, what steps I've done. ये remove कर लेते हैं. We'll get back to normal previous program. So what steps we have done here? What will be the output? Tell me. यहाँ पे क्या output आना चाहिए? For the first line.
Zero. I mean
Zero. Yes,
Zero.
we are displaying static variables value here. S is automatically initialized to 0, so you will get 0 here. Now here what will happen? ये line क्या करेगा?
Create object.
Two objects are
Object
created.
create.
है ना? दो object अलग-अलग create किए हमने. Object and object 1. So two objects are created for C1. So here what will happen? Function call. Yes, display function call. In display,
Yes, ma'am.
क्या display कर रहे हैं हम? Inside display. Right? So this message will be displayed. ठीक है? Now again here, what we are doing? What we are doing here? Again, same function call, display function, but here we are calling it directly on the class name. Here we are calling it on object. So both ways of calling this function is absolutely correct. So you'll get both, for both, what you say, function call, you will get the same output. ठीक है? Next what? ये line क्या करेगा?
इसको वैल्यू असाइन करें.
हाँ, s की वैल्यू 10 हो जाएगी, राइट? s वैल्यू फॉर ऑब्जेक्ट s, हाँ, ऑब्जेक्ट कौन से ऑब्जेक्ट के लिए? दिस ऑब्जेक्ट, नॉट फॉर दिस ऑब्जेक्ट. हैव यू ऑब्जर्व दैट कि मैंने कौन से ऑब्जेक्ट की s की वैल्यू चेंज की है? जस्ट फॉर दिस, नॉट फॉर दिस. एक ही ऑब्जेक्ट के लिए मैंने चेंज करी है वैल्यू. क्लियर? यस. सो आई हैव मॉडिफाइड व्हिच ऑब्जेक्ट? Modified s. In which object? In obj. And next, what will be the output? Object dot s, what value you will get?
10.
10.
Object dot s, what value you will get? 10 value you will get, है ना? क्योंकि हमने यहाँ पे 10 कर दी है उसकी वैल्यू s की. Okay. Now second line, object1 dot s. Now what value you will get?
0.
0.
0.
0. What is the reason behind it?
Static variable.
Not initialized with any value.
हाँ, see, for all the object, what we have learned that s value is initialized to 0. अगर हमने कोई value नहीं दिया है तो s का value क्या हो जाएगा? 0 हो जाएगा, right? Okay. So s value is initialized to 0. तो अगर आपने change किया object dot s को 10 से, तो object dot s will be 10, whereas object 1 dot s will still remain 0. क्योंकि हमने object 1 dot s को change नहीं किया है. Okay, so it will remain 0. Now, coming back to our slides. Now tell me, what will be the value here? यहाँ पे क्या value आना चाहिए? This value. Coming back to our slide, what we have learned that the static variables share the same memory space for all the object. सभी ऑब्जेक्ट के लिए, जैसे हमने कल देखा, राहुल पितड़े सर का नाम हमने एक ही बार स्टोर किया था. ओके, एंड सेम थिंग इज एप्लीकेबल टू ऑल द ऑब्जेक्ट. रोल नंबर इज स्पेसिफिक टू वन पर्टिकुलर ऑब्जेक्ट. ये रोल नंबर 1 है, रोल नंबर 2, रोल नंबर 3. इट इज स्पेसिफिक टू वन पर्टिकुलर ऑब्जेक्ट, whereas क्लास टीचर नेम इज कॉमन टू ऑल. तो अगर मैंने सपोज मतलब राहुल पितड़े सर की जगह पे कोई और यहाँ पे क्लास टीचर डाला है, यहाँ पे चेंज किया है यूजिंग दिस ऑब्जेक्ट, ऑब्जेक्ट 1 डॉट क्लास टीचर इज इक्वल टू मे बी सम अदर क्लास टीचर लाइक से श्रद्धा ओवल. सो इन दैट केस this change is reflected to only this object or for all the object? All object. क्योंकि what is the reason behind it? आपका memory space तो वही है ना?
Yes, ma'am.
Memory space तो same है. Like say in one container, suppose you put something. एक आपका छोटा सा container है जिसमें आपने कुछ तो डाल के रखा है. अगर आपने वो value निकाल के कोई दूसरा कुछ चीज उस container में डाला है, okay, so that particular thing has replaced the previous thing which was there in that container. Okay, it has replaced it because space is common. आपने अलग अलग space नहीं देके रखा है हर एक object wise, space is common. तो अगर मैंने ये ऑब्जेक्ट रेफर करके इसमें कुछ चेंज किया तो इट इज रिफ्लेक्टेड टू अदर ऑब्जेक्ट्स ऑल्सो, बिकॉज मेमोरी स्पेस तो उतनी ही है ना उसकी, हर एक के लिए अलग अलग मेमोरी स्पेस नहीं दिया है फॉर स्टैटिक वेरिएबल्स. So using object 1 also, if you make any changes, it is reflected in object 2 as well as in object 3. Okay. So now again coming back to this question, now tell me what value you'll get here. यहाँ पे
10.
इस लाइन का आउटपुट क्या आना चाहिए?
10.
Everyone is convinced with that we are getting 10 here. Though we are not modifying object 1.s, हमने किसे modify किया है? Object.s को. But what we have learned with static variable, common space is given for all the object that you create. मैंने यहाँ पे 2 object किए तो दोनों object के लिए s will remain common. And what will be specific to object? This I will be specific to object. ये जो I है, I variable, it is specific to object. मतलब, now, if I make some change here, object dot I equal to 10 किया मैंने. So my question is, if I display the value here of I using object dot I, अगर मैंने cout obj dot I किया, तो what value you'll get on the screen for this?
10.
10. ठीक है. और अगर मैं object 1 dot I करती हूँ, तो what value will get? Will you get 10?
Garbage value.
Garbage value. हमने I को initialize ही नहीं किया, तो कुछ भी ऐसे garbage value आ जाएगा उसका. So what we have learned with this example, that I value is specific to one particular object. अगर आप object में change करते हो, इस object में change करते हो, तो दूसरे object में वो reflect नहीं होता है. The reason is that it is specific to object. It is specific to object. Whereas S, अगर आप S is what? It is not specific to object. It is common for the entire class. Common for all the object of that class. तो अगर आपने एक ऑब्जेक्ट में चेंज किया तो वो दूसरे ऑब्जेक्ट में रिफ्लेक्ट होगा ही, श्योरली, which is not the case with the normal variable. मतलब यहाँ पे वो नहीं होता है. With I it won't happen, but with S it will happen. So I've changed S for this object, but it is reflected for other object also. Now next is what I've done. I've modified the value of S. मैंने उसको क्या कर दिया है? Object 1 dot s plus 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 मतलब increment its value. जैसे आप ये करते हो ना, obj 1 dot s plus 1 and the same thing.
Yes.
Right? So I've incremented its value by 1, and then again I am displaying the value for object as well as object 1. For both the object I am displaying the value of s. So again question here, what value I'll get? What is the output?
11.
11. For this, what is the output?
11.
11.
Yes. So is this concept clear to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Any doubt here? We'll execute this program. ये जो मैंने extra लिखा है, I have to delete it for execution purpose. So any doubt so far? ठीक है ना, सब निकाल दिया? Yes, I hope. Yes. See the output now. First, initially I haven't initialized anything, so automatically it takes 0. तो ये दोनों display के लिए मुझे output क्या आएगा? 0 0. Yes, I'm getting 0 0 value, and whenever I'm executing display function, I'm getting inside display. ठीक है? Now next is what? Next part is important to understand. These 4 lines. I've changed this value of object dot s equal to 10, and I'm displaying this s value for both the object and object 1. तो दोनों object के लिए value क्या हो गया आपका? 10 and 10 as discussed. Just we have discussed this. Then I'm incrementing its value for only one object. कौन से object पे किया हमने? Object 1 पे. But still the same change is reflected for this object as well as this object. दोनों के लिए आपका value क्या हो गया? 11 हो गया. Last 2 lines of output. For both the things, for both the object, the value will be 11. Is it clear? The difference between
Yes, ma'am.
normal variable and static variables. और function भी मैंने explain कर दिया. Here, अगर आप directly, if you try to access I here, is it allowed? अगर मैं I access करती हूँ, is it allowed?
No.
It gives error. The reason is that you cannot access normal variable inside static function. Static function can access only static variable. S आप कर सकते हो, मतलब यहाँ पे अगर मैंने cout S कर दिया, then it is okay. S you can access, but you cannot access I inside static function. So this is about static variables. इसमें क्या लिखा है? Static. ये और एक एग्जाम्पल है to understand. टाइम क्या हुआ है? Okay, time is there. So this is another example. Yesterday we were discussing about this student class. ठीक है? तो same example here. I have written the entire program. Class student. Here, this is what? This is the name of? This is the name of class teacher or student?
Student.
Student. Because it is specific to one particular student. तो ये आपका नॉर्मल वेरिएबल हो गया. या आप इसमें you can put roll number, name, जो भी आपको marks, सब वेरिएबल्स यहाँ पे डाल सकते हो for student. Now what about this? This is class teacher's name. Now class teacher we made it as
Static.
right. So it is now this class teacher is for all the student of this class. क्योंकि आपने स्टैटिक कर दिया, एक कॉमन मेमोरी स्पेस क्रिएट हो गया क्लास टीचर के लिए. ओके, इट इज नॉट क्रिएटेड इनसाइड स्टूडेंट ऑब्जेक्ट. कल हमने एक डायग्राम भी ड्रॉ किया था. आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू रिपीट इट अगेन नाउ. These variables will be created for each object separately, whereas class teacher will be created only once. One copy of class teacher for all the object of student class. Now in public, what we are doing, we are initializing the class teacher's name here. Okay, we are taking the input from the user. और जो भी इस class के लिए हमें class teacher चाहिए, so that name we can input here. But as we are accessing, यहाँ पे हम क्या access कर रहे हैं? Static variable access कर रहे हैं. So this way, this function we are calling it as static function. ठीक है? Similarly, this is to take the input from the user for class teacher. This is to display the name of the class teacher. दो अलग function लिखे हैं हमने, एक input लेने के लिए और एक display करने के लिए class teacher का नाम. Next is these two function. Next is to input your student's name and roll number. यहाँ पे मैंने नहीं डाला था roll number actually, so that's the reason I haven't added it here. Okay, तो student का नाम यहाँ पे input ले रहे हैं हम. Enter student's name and then C in name. Display is to display the name of the student. So 4 functions we have written. These two function for class teacher taking the input and displaying the class teacher name, and these two function to input the name of the student and display the name of the student. So 4 functions are there inside this class. Now the rule with static variable is what? It has to be initialized. तो initialize कहाँ करते हैं हम? After closing the class. Class आपका यहाँ पे close हो गया, तो here I am initializing it. By default वो करी, मतलब by default it will initialize to 0. अगर आपको initially कोई value देना है equal to करके और double quotes में some value you want to initialize, you can give, but otherwise it adds one null character here. तो यहाँ पे character and then class teacher 20 as it is I am declaring. If you observe, this is what character class teacher 20. ये same मैं यहाँ पे लिख रही हूँ. Character class teacher 20. Only one modification I have done. I have mentioned the scope, class scope. आपके class का नाम है student, so student and then class scope. So this is compulsory for all the static variables. So this is initialization. Then next is in main program. I've done it menu driven. Menu driven मतलब क्या होते हैं? Menu driven programs. C language में काफी सारे किए होंगे. What is menu driven program? आपने एक प्रोग्रामिंग लैंग्वेज ऑलरेडी पढ़ा है.
I'm using switch case. We give some options to choose.
हाँ, right. Menu driven program is what? We give some options to the user, okay, and like multiple option, जैसे आपका ATM machine काम करता है. ATM, when you insert the card in ATM, you get multiple option. One is for this, two is for this, three. So that is nothing but menu driven programs. आपको options मिलते हैं, you have to choose one, accordingly it is executed. और execution होने के बाद फिर से वो आपको मेनू दिखाता है कि again if you want to continue तो आपको फिर से मेनू दिखना चाहिए. You can select another menu. So these type of programs are called as menu driven program. Okay, और ये किससे करते हैं हम menu driven program? Using switch cases. Okay, and loops. So in do while loop, I'm using do while loop here. Okay, do while. So I'm giving these three options to a user, and like first one is add class teacher name, second is add student's name, and third is to display all the students. Displays to display the student, right? Then I'm accepting the input from the user, choice user की 1 2 3 में से जो भी choice है, तो switch and option. Okay, so based on the input that user give, user ने 1 दिया तो यहाँ पे case 1 execute होगा. If user gives 2 तो case 2 execute होगा, and so on. तो case 1 is to add the class teacher. Now as I told you, class teacher add करने के लिए उसका object करना कोई जरूरी नहीं है. We need not call it on any object. Directly I am calling this init class teacher function on the class. ठीक है ना, यहाँ पे class पे ही directly करते हैं. तो class name, scope resolution, and then I'm calling init class teacher. तो it will init class teacher में हमने क्या लिया है, सिर्फ class teacher का name input लिया है, and we are storing it there. The second next function is to add the student. So say for example here I have created 10 objects for the student. This is the student class, and these are the objects that I have created. 10 different objects I have created. So for each object I'm calling init function. So S1 of some count. I'll see each time I can add. I'm not adding all 10 student in one go. मैं क्या कर रही हूँ, हर बार whenever new admission happens, you have to add one student in that. Okay, so count I have initialized to 0, and then each time, see space I have created for how many student? 10 student. Space तो create करके रखी है, but as and when admissions are happening, I'm taking the name and I'll store it in that respective object. Okay, so what I'll do, if this is confusing, what I'll do is, what I'll do, what is the initial value of count? Initialize किया कि हमने count को 0 से initialize किया है. So S1 of 0, पहले iteration में क्या होगा यहाँ पे, S1 of 0 dot init, मतलब first जो student admission हुआ है तो उसके लिए init function call होगा. तो inside init what we are taking, its name, roll number, जो भी आपको लेना है, मैंने यहाँ पे सिर्फ एक variable लिया है. So I'm taking name as input, and it will get stored in which variable? S1 of 0. Then I'm incrementing count by 1, क्योंकि यहाँ पे हम क्या यूज कर रहे हैं, count. तो next iteration के लिए ये count क्या होना चाहिए, next student के लिए 1 होना चाहिए, next के लिए 2 होना चाहिए. So each time this count value to be
Ma'am, you are not audible.
value is stored in CNT.
Ma'am, you are not audible last minute.
Okay, so I was explaining about this. Okay, so CNT, now am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Now
ma'am.
you are clear.
So we are accepting the input, that is name, roll number, and all the value that you want using this init function. And init function I'm calling for all the object of S1. पहले CNT का value क्या था? Initially it was 0.
Zero.
हाँ, तो पहले iteration के लिए क्या होगा, 0 के लिए execute होगा. Then I'm saying CNT plus 1. तो ये आपका count increment होके 1 हो गया. Then again new admission, I'll increment the count by 1. So that is the reason here I've taken CNT, and each time I'm incrementing that count by 1. Okay, new admission होता है तो आप value ले लो and then again increment this count by 1. So now my question is, how many admissions have happened till now where that count is whole? In which variable? Can I say that all 10 admissions are happened? Where is
No.
that count? No, that count is maintained in which variable? CNT variable, right? Na? So now if user say display all the students on the screen, if user say this option, third option, so in case 3 what I've done, I'm taking one for loop wherein that I value will range from 0 to CNT and not 10. मैंने यहाँ पे 10 लिया है, नहीं लिया है, नहीं लिया है, क्योंकि मुझे पता नहीं अब तक कितने एडमिशन हुए हैं. दैट एडमिशन काउंट इज देयर इन CNT. क्योंकि नया एडमिशन होता है तो मैं CNT में स्टोर करती हूँ ना, आई इंक्रीमेंट दिस वैल्यू बाय 1. So here this I will range from 0 to CNT and for all the student I'm displaying its record on the screen. ठीक है? तो students record I'm displaying using display function. अब ये student के लिए हो गया ये सारा. Now what about class teacher? Class teacher का हमने यहाँ पे initialize कर दिया था ना. ठीक है? First option. Now how to display the class teacher's name? Class teacher name need not be displayed inside for loop, क्योंकि for loop फिर 10 student है तो 10 student के लिए 10 बार वो class teacher का नाम display होगा. Class teacher name should be displayed only once for all the students. तो इसलिए for loop के बाहर हमने लिया है. One method is I'm saying S1 of 0 dot class teacher. Another method, this is using object. आप एक तो ऐसे कर सकते हो, या दूसरा मेथड क्या है? Directly using class name. यहाँ पे ये this is the class name, this is scope resolution, and I'm calling display class teacher function. This is static function, so I'm calling directly on the class. Okay, and then break, and then again this here your switch case ends. Then you ask, do you want to continue and take the input till choice is not no. Whenever user enters yes, you will again enter in this do while loop, and once you give n as input for this ch, अगर आपने n दे दिया तो ये condition false हो जाएगा and it will come out of the loop. This is menu driven program, right? So now let us execute it. See how it happens. See, menu driven, menu is displayed on the screen. First one is add. I'll select one for example. ठीक है? तो पहला क्या है? Class teacher. It will ask me class teacher name. तो आपके class teacher का नाम डाल देते हैं यहाँ पे. Do you want to continue? Yes. Now add student. So I'll add the student. Second option. First student with name A. Do you want to continue? Yes. Again, add another student, say B. Then do you want to continue? Yes. And then now display it. Third option is to display. So now for displaying, first we have used for loop. यहाँ पे हमने display में क्या किया है? We are using for loop to display all the records of student. सभी student के record नाम हमने यहाँ पे display किए हैं. So first student, second student. And class teacher's name we are displaying only once outside your for loop. ये आपका for loop खत्म हो गया यहाँ पे. So here I am displaying class teacher name. So class teacher name is displayed here only once. Is it clear? So